Many people think of themselves as average or even dumb. In many cases, that is not necessarily true. Oftentimes, their mental resources are just preoccupied with other things and they feel they can't do much about it. It is not rare that only a tiny percentage of the theoretical mental potential is directed toward the task at hand. Most people's mind are in a sense defiled by the hindrances, to use the words of the Buddha, for example. But let us now find out what can be done about it and how this process works. But first, a few words on how the mind works. Like any artificial neural network, the brain gets new inputs via the sensory organs at discrete points in time. We call those points in time mind moments. Each mind moment, a new matrix of inputs arrives through the senses. Everything that is in there competes for our attention. Every sound that is too loud gets our attention. Every image that is interesting gets our attention, etc. And the more there is, the more chaotic and unproductive we usually are. But let us now have a closer look at how the process works. As you can see here, there is our brain and the content of our brain represented by a big grid. And in this big grid, there are usually all kinds of things going on. Everything we hear is represented here, every thought, every touch, every smell, everything is represented in this matrix. And for the average human being, this matrix is filled by stuff, a lot of stuff. But let us now have a look how the chaos comes to be. And this is usually the case by unmoral behavior. Or at least, unmoral behavior is defined as behavior that clogs our minds with unusual and useless stuff. And those unmoral deeds are represented by red colors. Once you do something that is bad, that makes you feel remorse, it will be represented in the matrix in your brain. After all, there has to be some state that represents what is going on in your head. And if we wait a little bit, from those unmoral deeds, more unmoral deeds will spawn, and more thoughts associated with those things will also be created that now too occupy your mind. In addition to that, there will be remorse and worry and hatred and all other kinds of negative things that strongly compete for your attention. If you feel those feelings of worry and hate and remorse, it will become practically impossible to concentrate properly for the task or at the task at hand. You have no chance to compete against those things. So the only real thing you should do and can do is remove those impediments that in a sense dampen you down. If you let them develop even further, they will get out of hand. Those thoughts of remorse, worry and hatred and all those other negative things have a tendency to get out of hand fast. They self-replicate. They get stronger over time if you leave them unchecked. The opposite is not true for wholesome thoughts. They do not get out of control on their own. It is mainly the negative things that, if you leave them unchecked, possess your mind. But let us now have a look at what can be done about it. If our mind is already chaotic, how can we, in a sense, purify it from those impediments? And the answer to that is pretty simple, actually. Try to cultivate the opposite of unmoral deeds, namely moral deeds. Those are defined as things that do not get out of control fast and pretty much feel righteous. So you can replace part of the content of your mind that was pretty chaotic in the beginning by more moral things. And if you do that pretty often, there are less and less impediments of mind in the current mind state, for example. And you replace the existing ones by good ones that do not get out of control and that do not occupy resources in your mind. And if you do that often enough over a relatively long period of time, pretty much nothing will remain of the previously clogged and cluttered mind. And now the mind is very blank. There is lots of room for things you can do, and you can pretty much freely direct your attention at those things that need attention. There aren't any things anymore that compete for your attention. There isn't the worry and the remorse and the hatred lingering in the back of your mind that pretty much grab your attention if you want it or not. There's pretty much nothing going on except for some positive thoughts that do not get out of control. And thus, your mental capacity is greatly enhanced. Once you start habits like meditating, your efficiency can thus skyrocket. And I can speak from experience there. My academic performance, for example, benefited so much from the less present impediments of mind. But let us now come to the most important points. Well, the mind of an average person is often filled with all kinds of random thoughts. Most of them are negative. And negative thoughts have a tendency to produce more negative thoughts. And this can spiral out of control. In a sense, this is a law of nature. The future states of the universe and states of mind are based on the current state of the universe and state of mind, and there is only a very tiny change compared to before. So if the last state was very negative, the next future state is also kind of negative in a sense. And this process can obstruct the vast majority of our mental capacity and thus greatly reduce our IQ. And by counteracting and replacing the negative thoughts by good ones, we can reverse the process and free up those mental resources and make our mind a tool again and not something that controls our life. You can make the experiment yourself by thinking back how productive you were when under the influence of strong emotions. And remember, it is a continuous scale. How productive have you been when your grandparents died, when your dog died, when you have been very mean to other people, or aggressive in traffic or things like that? Chances are that you had bad emotions for hours on end that you kept artificially alive by thinking about them all the time. And when you do that, you can't really use your mind as a tool during those emotional periods. And pretty much everyone has experienced that. And many times we are so used to the mental baggage we carry around that we don't even notice it. We don't notice how dumbed down we are by our negative emotions. And all in all, the less our minds are occupied by negative thoughts, the more productive and efficient we are. That's why it is true that if you meditate, you become better at everything, simply because you remove impediments and corruptions of mind. Okay, that's about it for today. Thank you very much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave me a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you feel like I missed something or misrepresented something, please let me know in the comment section so that other people can benefit from your wisdom. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.